Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. So the agony continues for Spurs. Too many people were saying, that's it, it's done. But it absolutely isn't. It could have been better. They took the lead, a wonderful goal from Matthys Tel. Then he connected with an overhead kick, unfortunately not with the ball, but with Ethan Ampadu. It could have been worse. Antonin Kinski with a quite breathtaking save in the very stressful injury time. 2 points then between Spurs and West Ham. It is not over. Sid will join us to discuss Barca winning the title, the Valverde fracas at Real Madrid, and Real Vallecano getting to the Conference League final. Also today, Hull City reached the playoff final after a great late win at Millwall. Perhaps the least fancied of the four have a chance to get back to the Premier League for the first time in 9 years. We'll have the latest on Spygate ahead of Southampton Borough and discuss Nigel Martyn playing cricket for England. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, hello.
Hi, Max.
Welcome, Lars Sivertsen.
Good morning, Max.
And good morning, Seb Hutchinson.
Good morning, Max.
Let's begin then at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Tottenham 1, Leeds 1. Lars, you are Spurs. How was it for you?
I mean, maybe this is not the most important point, but recently I've decided to do a thing that people who are approaching a sort of middle age do, which is kind of look after their health a little bit more. And I've gone to the doctor and we've been measuring blood pressure and things like this. And as part of this, I'm now measuring sort of my blood pressure at home to see where it's at. Now, I thoughtlessly decided to measure my blood pressure during the game. And I can tell you, Max, numbers not good. No. Numbers were up since yesterday, mysteriously.
Well, I hope you didn't do it in injury time, is all I'm saying. Because I
did it just
terrifying.
as Matthys Tel scored. I was sat there doing my blood pressure just as the goal went in, and then the numbers came back completely way up. Arguably not the top line from the game, but that's the thing that happened in my life. No, listen, I can't make up my mind about this because this is one of those that could go either way. If Spurs stay up, we will look back at the Kinski save as the moment that kept them in the league, and if they don't, then clearly this is a missed opportunity, because I think in the first half hour at least, this was not a good game. They were not playing very well. But they were, broadly speaking, under control. Leeds weren't creating anything, and Spurs were creating little looks that you kind of feel confident someone's going to turn into a goal at some point. And I was sat there thinking, this is the exact game that I was afraid Roberto De Zerbi maybe couldn't orchestrate. I was worried when he came in, he would try to do all this sort of baiting the press and tidy passing through the middle with Palhinha and the boys, and that this would be a total disaster. But what he has done, he has gotten them a little bit tighter organized. He has worked on their mentality. They're more aggressive, and they were able to turn it into quite a bad game. They were not able to really press Leeds high very effectively because Leeds were very direct. So the thing that's been really working for them the last sort of couple of games wasn't as effective here, but he turned it into a slightly boring game, which I thought was, broadly speaking, good. But the second half is not great. Between the 45th and the 90th minute, I think Tottenham have 2 shots. Now maybe that's a depth issue, but first half fine, second half not so good. Tel scores a great goal and then kicks someone in the head in his own box. In the end, with the chances Leeds have towards the end, I think a point is not a big disaster, but maybe an opportunity missed, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the save, Barry, is incredible, isn't it?
He made 2 brilliant saves in this game. The first was from Joe Roden, a downward header at the far post, which was definitely going in the bottom corner. He got a hand to it. Brilliant save. And his save in added time from Sean Longstaff, who played a lovely give and go with James Justin, I think it was, and then shot from a narrow angle. That was going in too. Kinski somehow gets a hand on it. I mean, the shot is from very close range, but he somehow gets a hand on it. Incredible reflex action and tips it onto the crossbar. I mean, the shot was struck with such venom that even getting a hand to it was, you would have thought there's more chance of him breaking his wrist here than keeping it out, but he did. And I love his redemption arc, which we have mentioned before, after what happened in Madrid. He showed incredible mental strength to come back from that, and he was a real hero last night, if not the hero.
Yeah, and he's good with his feet as well, actually, Seb. You're sort of looking ahead to next season and going, if Tottenham in the Championship, he's your number 1 keeper. Could he be your number 1 in the Premier League? I don't know, but he's shown in the last 3 games how good he is. Don't know why you're laughing at Tottenham being in the Championship. Said it's a very good league.
Yeah. You know they're not in the bottom 3, don't you?
You know how I'm feeling. I do.
Absolutely.
But,
I mean, you mentioned...
we'll get to the fixtures in a second.
Yeah, I mean, Lars mentioned the stress. You've sort of stated it there, looking forward to the championship. And I thought to myself, in the past week, David Attenborough's turned 100, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's a massive football fan. He's never declared an allegiance to everybody. And this is maybe the key to a very long life, because cortisol levels, when you love nature, you're out in the field just watching birds through binoculars and stroking gorillas. That's a calming situation to be in.
Hang on, I'm not sure
stroking a gorilla. I'm not sure. A gorilla? I would be very stressed if I was stroking a gorilla.
Well, have you seen Sir David Attenborough stroke a gorilla? Then you'll change your mind. If you see that, you'll change your mind. And they're calm. You know, they've been misrepresented, gorillas. As for Spurs, I think it's that where you're trying to pick up a situation where Kinski, obviously the situation against Atletico Madrid, under a different manager in a different scenario, and things can work for players in different scenarios. And you know, in this particular situation, that Spurs are going to need their goalkeeper to play well, because of the tension in that second half was crazy, from actually Spurs playing really well in the first half. And I thought, actually, they're probably going to take this game away from Leeds. And if they score a second, then I think Leeds are done. But once Leeds got that penalty, it was incredible the way the players just felt that feeling that I've seen in several games from Spurs. You think of the Brighton game, you think of Sunderland, you think of games in the last couple of months where they've played that way. Even though they're on this 4-match unbeaten run, it's not been as comfortable as you would have thought it would be, bar the Villa game.
Yeah, I mean, they do deflate like a balloon. You're right. The Sunderland game, it was pretty boring, and then that goal and the deflection, you could just see it fall out of the players. Then in injury time, Barry, we had this sort of Maddison penalty claim. Spurs haven't had a penalty all season. It's probably the correct call. I mean, I just don't think I could have handled the stress of it. I wanted it, but I couldn't. I was thinking, in a way, I'm pleased I don't have to go through the pain of watching us take a penalty.
Yeah, when I first saw it in real time, I thought it was a penalty, and the replay quickly disabused me of the notion he got the ball, a bit of the ball, not much of it, but enough of it for it not to be a penalty. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Just on the subject of Attenborough, I'm currently staring at a parakeet out the window, and that's why I'm so calm.
Thank you, Barry. Yeah, I mean, look, we've talked about the challenge from Tel. It's such a silly challenge, isn't it? And it's just like everybody can see it coming. Like everyone except him, like the entire Spurs defense are just there going, "Oh, don't do that," you know. And I mean, I feel sorry for him, but yes, it was annoying. And actually, perhaps the moment in the game, you know, that has sort of glossed over a little bit, Lars, is the Richarlison chance at 1-0, because that does change things, and it's not a simple chance, but he gets it so off target. It's incredible, actually.
This is like sofa analysis, but it's coming towards him, and it's bouncing a little, and it's like he's not quite ready for it. Like he's just a fraction of 100th of a section slow in getting his leg up, and I just kind of, maybe a centre forward should sniff that's something that would happen. You get the sense that big Erling Haaland would have been prepared for that one by comparison. It's a slightly mean comparison, but Richarlison is who he is. And I think, listen, in totality, if you look at the transfer fee they paid for him as a Premier League centre-forward, he has not been a good addition to the club. But I do think fans, some at least, have some patience with him, because he's very like an emotionally extrovert player who clearly is trying very hard and fighting in a season where you want to see that because they're in trouble. I just wish he was a little bit better. Like if he could like finish those chances, that would help a lot, and he'd have real cult hero potential, I think. On Matthys Tel, I think you have to say, like, he's a young forward who should maybe not be they will do weird things in their own box. That's not where they're used to being, and they don't really have the sort of rules of the game there in their spine. But he was at least like revenue neutral on the day, because his goal was out of nothing as well. Like he created that on his own. So he created one goal out of nothing and then inexplicably gave away a penalty. So that's net zero on the Matthys Tel there.
He was quite lucky to be net zero, because he had that cross through his own box as well.
Yes, that was oopsie as well.
Kevin Danso got him out of jail.
Keep him down the other end. That could restrict it. Like maybe he's one of those who shouldn't come back and help out. He should just kind of just stay up there, Matthys.
Jonathan Wilson wrote, it's still in their hands. Given the goal difference situation, a win and a draw would effectively guarantee it. But that's 4 points. And if Spurs hadn't conceded the late equaliser to Brighton, and if they'd held on here, they'd already have them. The worst thing they could do would be to dwell on such thoughts, to dwell on the fact they'd already be safe. Way to make me dwell on that, Wilson. Thank you. So, Barry, Spurs are 38 points from 36 games, and they have Chelsea away and Everton at home. Chelsea is 3 days after Chelsea playing the FA Cup final. West Ham have 36 points. They go to Newcastle on Sunday at 5:30. Then they have Leeds at home. De Zerbi did say, we hope Leeds play like that against West Ham. So I think
it is worth noting, actually, that was a very honest performance from Leeds.
Yeah.
If you didn't know which team was battling relegation in that match, you would struggle to guess.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, maybe it's just because I'm an old romantic, I think James Maddison is going to have a major say in possibly keeping Spurs up. You know, his first appearance of the season last night got a big welcome from the Spurs fan. Or that might be just because he replaced Matthys Tel, who was therefore no longer able to do any damage. But, yeah, I mean, you're adamant Spurs won't win against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. I just heard someone saying on the radio that Chelsea at the worst would probably still beat Spurs. And I think the Spurs team is clearly mentally fragile, so maybe they won't. If they have a mental block about winning at Stamford Bridge, which they clearly do, or Spurs do, maybe they won't. I wouldn't be at all surprised if West Ham beat Newcastle. And, yeah, who knows after that?
Yeah. I mean, Seb, it does. I mean, obviously, because West Ham play first, and we've said this before, it's a great advantage if you win, and it is a great disadvantage if you don't, which is a sort of, it seems like an obvious thing to say because it's an obvious thing to say. I guess Newcastle away, and maybe I'm just speaking with hope rather than anything else, it's Newcastle's last home game of the season, right? You know, and those fans care, and Eddie Howe cares because his job is under threat. And you would expect Newcastle to really go for it in this game, even if they don't have a lot to play for.
Watch them play
against. Have you seen them play
Forest
recently?
I was good.
Sorry.
I was actually going to counter that and say they looked good in spells against Forest at times, but yeah, you do wonder if West Ham really go for it, and they're going to have to for everything. And I genuinely believe if West Ham win at St James's Park, then Spurs are in big trouble because you think it's then Spurs having to go to Stamford Bridge and win. I mean, how many wins have Spurs had at Stamford Bridge? I can't remember any in my lifetime. So
I think it's one in 20 years or something.
It's crazy. Chelsea played well against Liverpool. They seem to have something better about the way they were playing. So who knows? But that seems to me for West Ham an absolutely. Well, it's the game for them because Leeds at home on the final day. Now, we mentioned Leeds played well yesterday and you think they have nothing to play for, but the league is so tight that if Leeds had won yesterday, they could still target a European place if things go their way. That's how ridiculous it is. So who knows with that game on Sunday? That feels to me to be one of the biggest games left that we have this season for sure. West Ham going to St James's Park.
So the betting markets have West Ham at an implied probability of 82% to go down. I do not agree with that, I have to say. The 82-18 split, I can absolutely not get on board with at all in this situation. And I think this Chelsea game is super interesting, right? Because you say Chelsea at their worst could beat Spurs. They do have, I think, 1 point in the last 8 or last 7 in the league. They've got 1 point, Chelsea. And they're coming straight off a cup final, which will either be like the day that sort of kind of redeems their season a little bit, or it will be the final nail in the coffin of a total disaster with no redeemable features. Either way, squad is probably in a slightly odd headspace 3 days after that. I think it's fair to say, one way or the other. But also, if this was we have this discourse about Chelsea, like, are they still Chelsea or are they just a collection of bits put together by sort of silly American hedge fund types? If there's any sense of the sort of the spirit of Chelsea Football Club still being alive, they will go 150% in this, because this is between them two. There's been so much spite. In terms of sheer nastiness, I feel like Chelsea Spurs have almost kind of overtaken Chelsea Arsenal really as rivalries. There seems to be almost more of an unpleasant edge to those meetings. And if these Chelsea players want to show their fans that they have any affiliation with the club and the culture at all, relegating Spurs is a very good place to start. So it'd be interesting to see. That is such a fascinating game, and how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there is the point as well that these are two of the worst teams in the league, and there is a chance that neither of them get any points for the rest of the season. Of course, that is, that's probably why the odds are as they are, is expecting neither team to perhaps win either of their games. Just on West Ham, Jacob Steinberg writing in the paper that they're planning to contact the PGMOL about Callum Wilson's strike being ruled out. The issue, as they see it, is the inconsistency. They accept their complaint is unlikely to get them anywhere. They're expected to ask for the audio between the ref, Chris Kavanagh, and the VAR, Darren England. Kavanagh was advised by England to go to the pitch side monitor to review the incident.
Let's get it right. Like, there's not a lot of doubt that there's a foul on Rayo there, and I think, I'm prepared to be wrong on this, but I think if you look at the course of the season, it is actually quite consistent. You've seen the referees allow a lot of grappling and holding in the box, but they haven't allowed people to interfere with the goalkeeper's arms. It has been allowed to shove the goalkeeper into the goal, like that's been fine. But on the point of like actually impacting his arms, that's something they've not allowed before. So I think that's what they would point to. But I think now that the sort of
sorry, is that true? Because I was listening to something else yesterday saying, there were two Arsenal goals, one Gabriel on Emi Martinez, I think, and one someone on Bayindir in the Man United goal. Maybe they were slightly different.
Bayindir
obviously
was
slightly different.
Bayindir was shoved into the goal essentially, and Gabriel his arm was up, but he wasn't like holding his arm the way Reyes was. If we want to get really nitpicky with it, which maybe we shouldn't. My point was more that when the sort of initial fury has died down over this debate, I hope there is a discussion about, like, whether you're an Arsenal fan or not. I don't think people necessarily want the sport to look like this. I don't think we want every time there's a corner for there to be a massive melee, and for the poor old referee to try to sort out what happened there. And I hope it moves towards a more like productive discussion of what that should actually look like instead. How you can police it more effectively, and I wonder if I would like to see the referees come into next season and be given mandate to actually clamp down on this. And this is where the much dreaded VAR can be a useful tool, because if you watch it in real time, it's just a heaving mass of limbs and men. Mm-hmm. And the referee could just blow up and say, this was a total mess. We have to check the tape. And then whichever the first clear foul is, you give that. And whether that's a penalty or a free kick the other way, then fine. And I think if you're actually strict on it for a few weeks and months, and actually support the refs in face of the inevitable backlash when things go against the big clubs, I think it's possible to change this. But you got to remember, we did come into this season. I have quotes here. We did come into this season with Howard Webb talking about... I feel like I've said that. I need to find the quotes now. Maybe I don't have the quotes. We came into the season with Howard Webb talking about how we're going to have a clampdown on this, and the clampdown didn't last. And I think what happens is there's a couple of controversial decisions. Referees get told it's a physical game. Football expects this to be allowed, and then we're back at this again. And hopefully next season they will try again.
Yeah, it does seem to be a Premier League problem. And Lars, you will probably know better than the rest of us, that the Bundesliga, Serie A, La Liga, this doesn't happen as much. I mean, of course, people are pushing each other around, but this is not the same. It's not wrestling. It's not Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Rowdy Roddy Piper every corner.
No, and they are much stricter on it, which is why every time I've heard this described as a VAR problem, I don't get it, because it's not a problem elsewhere where they have VAR. It's more a sense that they've decided to allow and to have a high bar for interference in the Premier League, which I think is just leading to these wrestling matches. Chelsea
have started to make contact with prospective managerial candidates. David Ornstein writing in Athletic that Xabi Alonso is emerging as a first choice, who remains open to the possibility. Lots of managers available. And, it'll be interesting to see who's managing who at the start of next season, won't it? Apparently, Benfica are interested in Marco Silva if José Mourinho goes to Real Madrid. And we'll talk about José perhaps going to Real Madrid with Sid in part 2. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. It's part 2 for Sid, relegated from part 1. Don't take it personally, Sid. How are you?
Well, I've just been relegated as well. Oviedo went down last night mathematically, so there you go. You have. I've been relegated twice in one go. That's harsh.
How was that season for Oviedo? Because you were very excited when they got promoted, but the getting promoted season is always more fun than the getting relegated one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, it hasn't been very good. We're on our third manager. The second manager didn't win any games at all, and also caused a bit of a kind of a social. What do you call it? A social fault line, shall we say, with the fans, because they sacked the guy that took them up and they brought back the guy that had walked out on them a year earlier. So it didn't go down very well. Unlike Oviedo, who have gone down very well, etc. and so on.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, well, let's go to the top then. Barcelona won La Liga by beating Real Madrid at 2-0. A lovely free kick from Marcus Rashford and a lovely goal from Ferran Torres. Great little back heel from Dani Olmo. And look, they've been comfortably the best side in the league, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. I mean, and the way the Clásico played out really was the way the season had played out, that Madrid really couldn't lay a glove on them. It felt relatively comfortable from Barcelona. They've not been quite as exciting this season as they were last year. They've not scored as many goals. They've tightened up a little bit at the back. I know that's hard to believe for those who watch them in Europe and look at that high line, and we continue to talk about it, but they have been better at the back. They've conceded fewer goals than anyone else. There's been moments in the season when you've not been entirely sure about them, but the numbers are incredible. When they lost the Clásico to Real Madrid in October, Madrid were 5 points ahead of them. They're now 14 points behind them. Since that game, Barcelona have won 23 of 25 matches. They're on course for 100 points, which of course has only happened twice before. And the reason for that is that they don't draw. They win loads and loads of games. They don't draw. When they don't win, they lose. And Flick, I think it's a lot of it is about Flick and about the management of a very young squad, about finding solutions where there weren't necessarily solutions or didn't appear to be. And yeah, they've been by far the best team in Spain this season.
Does this make all the levers that they pulled worth it? Like because I still don't quite understand. Sort of the levers have disappeared from my mind. It's like they're totally fine, or will they still implode in 5 years?
No, I mean, look, so the levers, I think in a way, one of the ways of looking at it is to see it in really simple terms, which is to say, what's the original lever that a football club has is selling players. So Barcelona's decision was, well, you don't sell players because what that will do in the short term, obviously, but also maybe in the midterm and possibly even the long term, is it will devalue your team. You need to be continuing to compete, not just because that's the fundamental aim of a football club, but because long term, that's the way you continue to get big contracts. That's the way you continue to generate interest. That's the way that you continue to grow. And so they know that they took a risk. They know that they effectively mortgaged mortgage against some of their future earnings and so on. But there was a feeling that this would work anyway. Now, obviously, you look at it in a financial situation, is still problematic. They're still not on an even keel in terms of La Liga's financial fair play rules, what everyone here refers to as 1-to-1. In other words, for every €1 you make, you can spend €1. They've been in deficit against that. They think they'll get to that this summer, but they've said that before. Does this make the levers worthwhile? I think you're right. The question is whether in the long term this has a big impact on them. Their argument will be no, that this generates and expands into the future. Of course, they're a reconstruction of the Camp Nou, which is now 60,000 and will eventually be 105,000, although that too obviously costs a huge amount of money. But you're right about the idea that it's out of people's minds, because right now it is out of people's minds.
Marcus Rashford scored a brilliant free kick. He scored 14 and set up 14 this season, which is a pretty good return for him. What's been the vibe on his campaign?
Marcus Rashford's this amazing case of the kind of, but so I think if you look at him as what he is on the surface, which is a loan deal for a year, he's been brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, and those numbers are completely incontestable. You can't argue with those at all. The issue really for Barcelona now is, would they like him to stay? Yes, they would, but this is a player that's got a €30 million purchase clause, which doesn't seem a huge amount from Manchester United's point of view, but from Barcelona's point of view, it's quite a lot. Plus the fact that, of course, he would be a high wage earner. So this is the kind of deal that they look at it and think, yeah, our resources, and this goes back to what you were saying a minute ago about pulling the levers, our resources are probably going to be pushed elsewhere. If we can get some sort of deal, then they would like him to stay, but probably not at that price. And so they're in this position where Rashford, it's curious because they signed him to essentially be the backup for all three of the forward positions. In truth, he's only really been the backup on the left-hand side. And that's been because Rafinha's been injured too. He's had quite a lot of games. Although in the last 3 or 4 weeks, he started to play on the right for the first time all season. He's contributed with key assists. He's contributed with key goals, including this one, but maybe not in the really, really biggest games. And there is still that slight sense of, how do I put this, kind of a feeling that we'd like him to impose himself a bit more. We'd like him to be in the game a bit more, to drive games a bit more, to do some of those things that Flick wants in terms of pressing, in terms of dragging the game, in terms of going at people. And when he goes beyond people he's got space to run into, he's absolutely fantastic. I think I saw a statistic the other day that in terms of the recorded speeds of player this year in Spain, he's the fastest player in La Liga. But there's just been those sort of moments when there's been a slight doubt, so much so that even when players have been injured, and we've had not that much from Lewandowski this year, not that much from Rafinha this year, numerically I'm talking about here in terms of number of games they played, an injury to Lamine at the end. Even in those moments, there's been times when Flick has chosen other solutions rather than Rashford, who's the one that in theory would fill in for all three of them. And he hasn't played at centre forward, despite the fact that we thought that he might be the one that would play if Lewandowski wasn't available or Ferran Torres wasn't available. So I think the feeling is that if he was to go now, which is, I suppose, a logical conclusion to a year's loan deal, it'd be like, wow, that really worked well. But it's maybe not quite enough for them to massively push out the boat to make the deal permanent.
And clearly, look, he's interesting to our audience, but he is not the entire Barcelona squad. We know how good Yamal is. Firstly, how good has he been this season? And secondly, who else has been performed well for them that perhaps people who don't watch La Liga week in, week out haven't noticed?
Well, I mean, I think the answer to the question, if you want a name that you go, really? It's Eric Garcia. Eric Garcia has been fantastic in all sorts of different positions, at right back, at centre back, at central midfield. He's played really, really well. And that's what I mean by unusual solutions. So you see the last weeks of the season, the centre back is Gerard Martyn. Gerard Martyn was the backup left back, and he's now the first choice centre back, which I think obviously tells you something about the fact that Flick wasn't sure about his centre back partnerships. Inigo Martinez left in the summer. He was trying to find solutions there, and he's ended up with Gerard Martyn in that position. Joan Garcia, the goalkeeper, who came from Espanyol across the city, has been very, very good indeed. And Lamine, I think Lamine's been the best player in Spain this year. With one or two potential candidates ahead of him, with him. But he's been the best player in Spain in terms of the level of performance and in terms of being consistently really good in that mid part of the season where they pulled away from Real Madrid, where they started to play well in Europe, where you were thinking, okay, this is maybe a really big season for them. The issue with Lamine is that at the start of the season, he had, I've looked this up so many times and I still don't like it. The translation in English is a sportsman's hernia, like a groin issue, a recurring groin issue. And he was really struggling with that earlier in the season. And he wasn't performing the way he liked. I think the phrase was my inner turmoil or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording now. And he said something like, I would love to be the player that everyone wants me to be. And for the first time, you saw, if you like, an expression of the pressure, of the sense of underachievement, of the sense that he wasn't playing the way he wanted to. And this is in the late autumn, I think early winter. But then from kind of December onwards until he got injured 3 or 4 weeks ago, he's been absolutely brilliant. And yet, obviously, it hasn't taken him to a Champions League final. It hasn't been the whole season, but he is, I think, the best player in Spain this season.
Is there any danger of him missing the World Cup? He's got a hamstring injury, hasn't he?
There is a danger. I don't think it's a very big danger. So he's got a hamstring injury. It was really interesting, I thought, that Barcelona, who as a club don't really have any need to do this, and also at that point, they released a statement and they said he's out for 4 to 6 weeks, but he will make the World Cup. A club doesn't necessarily need to say that about the national team. That shouldn't be their priority or their concern. But I think that told you how important he was. Now, the trouble is, of course, that coming back for the World Cup, and that would mean he's ready just about in time, is how are we defining ready? Because this is the kind of injury that you're coming back from it, but coming back from it fully fit, fully quick, sharp, and with no risk of the injury recurring is a different issue. So Luis de la Fuente, the Spain manager, Barcelona themselves, Lamine, there's been no real sense that this is a disaster, he's not going to get there. But there is that nagging doubt that says, is he going to get there fully fit? Now, Spain's first 2 games are Saudi Arabia and Cape Verde. And I think there's a feeling that, maybe he doesn't play the first game. Maybe he gets some minutes in the second, and maybe he gets a good chunk of minutes in the third game against Uruguay in the group, and then plays for the rest of the tournament. Because, I was saying he's the best player for Barcelona. He's Spain's best player. I mean, I genuinely think there have been periods this year, say from around about December till about April, that I watched him play and thought, he might well be the best player in the world.
Sid, let me just very briefly, you mentioned there's a sense that there's a frustration that he hasn't been quite the player he wants to be.
But he's come through that now. So, yeah, he's come through it, though.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can maybe just drop it. I just want to, reiterate, this is a guy who's, in 26 starts, he's put up 16 goals and 11 assists, and he is 18. Any sense that he's not doing, it is mad. It's still an absolutely incredible contribution, right?
Yeah, absolutely is. And as I say, that was him saying that. And early in the season when he was struggling with that groin issue, there was a feeling that he wasn't at his best level. I don't know if you remember the Clásico back in October. There was a lot of that was thrown back at him, saying, you talk too much, and then Real Madrid come and beat you, and you've really got to keep your mouth shut. And there was a little bit. Now, everything that happens in Spain, you have to see, I think, sometimes through the divide of Madrid and Barcelona, and where the media is leaning and where people are leaning, and how that conditions the way that they see things. But what happened, I think, in the autumn was that Lamine Yamal went from being Spain's boy to being only one half of Spain's boy, if you see what I mean. And I think that played a part as well. But also, he wasn't playing that brilliantly. But then he came back and did. There was earlier in the season, Lamine Yamal was celebrating goals by crowning himself. And there was this real feeling that you thought, wow, he's amazing. This 18-year-old kid who, far from being worried about the pressure, is kind of saying, bring it on. I want this. There's a little touch of cockiness, a little touch of self-belief that says, I want this. And yet then those subsequent Instagram posts, I think, were a kind of a first glimpse of that. Maybe there's a realization that this isn't always fun, that this isn't always great. And then he came back, a quieter version of him, at least in terms of his public pronouncements and stuff, fewer interviews, less exposure for him. And his performance level was amazing. As you say, this is the thing that we keep coming back to. He's still only 18. And there's no doubt about it, particularly with Rafinha out injured. And I think Rafinha was probably the best player in Spain last season, even with Lamine and Pedri playing fantastic seasons. With Rafinha injured, he's carried Barcelona in terms of the weight of, attacking productivity. Everything he does, scoring some of the goals out of nothing, scoring the same Lamine Yamal goal over and over again, cutting inside, curled into the top corner. And looking at times like you actually can't stop him. People are putting 3 or 4 people on him and still not able to stop him. And then this injury at the end of the season, I think shouldn't, but inevitably does, kind of just take a little bit of the edge off his season. But as I say, I think best player in Spain.
You talk about which way, people are leaning regards, Yamal. I mean, we don't know exactly how Tchouaméni was leaning on Valverde, do we? We don't have the official line. Denied they came to blows, and Valverde went to hospital because he accidentally hit a table. It's an extraordinary story, isn't it?
It is, and it really is. And so much of Valverde's statement was kind of like, you could sort of pick through it and go, so, nope. Nope. So neither of us hit each other. It wasn't a big deal, which is why you've just been fined €500,000 each. Now, obviously, look, there will be lots of people saying, well, €500,000 for footballers who are earning €20 million is not that big a deal. But actually, even then, should I risk doing the maths? Is that 5% of a salary? So that's a lot of money. 5% of the salary obviously would be if anyway. Let's not do the maths. There would be if it was 10. But the
sure. It's still quite a lot of money. Yeah,
it's a lot of money, and it was about Madrid saying this isn't acceptable. I think obviously the other thing is it's in the context of a season of collapse and dressing room division and confrontations and problems. And I think what that does is it says to you that this is the culmination of that, and this is also partly a product of their defeats, because obviously that brings all this stuff to the surface, but it's partly an explanation for why the defeats have happened. That this is broken. And it has been. I'm struggling to think of an example of anything like this in Real Madrid's time. The only one I can come up with is when Gravesen laid into Robinho in a training session. And then Gravesen afterwards. And I think, again, this sort of speaks to that idea of dressing room dynamics and different attitudes towards commitment and professionalism and so on. I remember Gravesen describing some of his players as acting like shits. And I think there's a degree of that in this. And it's not good. And Real Madrid is genuinely a mess. And I don't remember a crisis quite like this one. 2 years in a row without winning a major trophy. A sense that they can't fit together the key players. There's a headline, and actually it did the rounds again on Twitter this morning, but it's still worth picking up because I think it's funny. And also because I think it says something about kind of expectation and reality. And it was after they won the Super Cup. the European Super Cup. Mbappé had just arrived, so they were European champions. They just won the Super Cup, and there's a photograph of Bellingham, Vinicius, and Mbappé. And actually, here's the kicker: it was actually a photograph of Bellingham, Vinicius, Mbappé, and Rodrigo. But they took Rodrigo out of the photograph. They cut it, so it was the three of them, and they put BMW in Spanish. They always use the V. Bellingham, Mbappé, Vinicius, and it said, "What was? I think the headline was unprecedented dominance." Which was talking about what Madrid had been winning with all the European Cups. But obviously what he was really doing was projecting what's going to happen now. The European champions have bought Mbappé. Wow, they're going to be unstoppable. And the opposite has happened. And obviously it's a bit facile, it's a bit simplistic. But of course a lot of people have gone, what's the big elements that's changed from being a European Cup winner to now being a team that doesn't win anything? And the team that player left is now winning it all. Could it be that all of this is Kylian's fault?
Let's talk about that then, because Philippe was talking about the petition yesterday, and
it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, obviously, online petitions, you can get signatures for just about anything.
Well, that was it. He was actually because I thought, well, it's obviously just bullshit and it's stupid. But Philippe was saying lots of people are taking it seriously, and it's actually a more serious issue than I had given it credence.
Yeah,
I don't know what you think.
I mean, look, I don't know how seriously I take a petition. But still, 32 million people is a lot of people. How many of those are bots? Obviously, I don't know. How much of it is kind of silly and people go, hey, I voted to get rid of Mbappé, and it's sort of then it's forgotten about. And it doesn't really mean much, I think, to sign an online petition. But what it does is it tells you something about an undercurrent. I'm going to completely contradict myself here now. It tells you something about an undercurrent, but it also tells you something on a very superficial level, which is, Mbappe's fault. And as I say, it is simplistic, it is superficial. There is this kind of meme now of Mbappé as the dictator who comes in and orders everyone around, and it ruins everything. And this is now a mess because of him, because he does symbolise some of the problems they've got, which isn't the same as saying he's responsible for them. But there's no doubt that Real Madrid have struggled to find a way to get him and Vinicius to function well together. It's not lost on anyone that some of their better performances have been with one or the other missing. It's not been lost on anyone, and actually Bellingham said this, I think, in the press conference before the Bayern game. He actually admitted that, his role had changed. That he had partly been a victim of his apparent versatility, which is possibly not quite as versatile as we thought. So Bellingham's first season, when he's amazing, he's playing off the front, he's allowed to arrive into the area, he's scoring lots of goals. Then he's got to shift because of Mbappé. Then Mbappé and Vinicius are trying to find a place for them. And obviously Bellingham had the injury with the shoulder and didn't play a huge amount. And Bellingham hasn't really refound his place since then. And I think there is, without any doubt, a feeling that what Mbappé has done is change the environment or the ecosystem, if nothing else.
Words like broken, confrontation, problems, crisis, acting like shits. Is José Mourinho the answer to fix those?
Right. Well, shall I be really cynical here and read between the lines and be conspiratorial as well? But I must admit, when these, because a big part of Real Madrid's concern, and I actually think possibly too big a part of it, is not so much what happened as how did this get out, and why did this get out, and who is leaking stuff. Now, obviously, part of the answer to that is lots of people are leaking lots of things. It's not always a single person. It's very rarely a single person. And obviously, you still had this fight. Whether it's got out or not is another issue. But it does matter that it gets out, and it does matter that the story is told, because that tells you something about the way dynamics play out publicly, the way that there are more than just players. There's kind of interest groups behind them. There's people, if you like, fighting a cause, sometimes without even the cause knowing that they're fighting it for them. And it doesn't always help them. And I must admit, so here comes the cynical bit, I did sort of think this and think, who would most benefit from all this stuff coming out? Would it be a Portuguese man who is seen as the guy that comes in and sorts this shit out, and don't worry, I'll deal with it, and we need an iron fist? And actually, for what it's worth, I'm not entirely sure that Mourinho is the iron fist. I think the thing about Mourinho is that I'm sure we've talked about this before, Max, right? At some level, Florentino Perez, the president of Real Madrid, has always wanted Mourinho back. This is about the only manager he's ever really believed in. This is a president who thinks that managers are someone you've got to put there, but you'd really rather do without them. That they all think they're more important than they really are. That this is about the players. The only manager that he's really properly warmed to, and I include Zidane and Ancelotti in this, despite the success they have, has been Mourinho. And there's a contradiction there, because at heart, what he wants is someone to sort out these jumped up kids. But he also actually thinks it is about the kids. There is only one Vinicius, but there's hundreds of managers out there. There's only one Mbappé, but I can get another guy to run the team. That obviously is part of the cultural problem at Real Madrid. But there is no guy quite like Mourinho, at least from the point of view of the president.
Yeah. Let's talk about Rayo Vallecano getting to the Conference League final, because you tweeted something to the effect of "This is the best thing ever" or something.
It's not a million miles off being one of the best things that's ever happened. I mean, apart from Oviedo going up with Santi Cazorla and having now just been gone down again, maybe not. This is really amazing. Now, obviously, look. I'll do the party poop a bit first. It's not that amazing in that a Spanish team in the Conference League might expect to get to the final. Because, you're talking about a Spanish team. And if you go through the teams that Rayo Vallecano have played, this isn't an absolute miracle. Although I did think, in terms of resources and stuff, they might not get through against Strasbourg. But what Rayo are, there's a risk of me giving you the really kind of sweetless and light sort of Hollywood film version of this. But Rayo are, if you like, sort of the ultimate expression of the neighbourhood team. The working class neighbourhood team, not just in the neighbourhood, but kind of born of the neighbourhood, with a consciously left wing, consciously populist perspective of themselves, with a stadium that's only got 3 sides, that's got flats overlooking the other side, that's an absolute basket case of a club that's got an owner that the fans can't bear, that it does so many things wrong. Like the best example of this, I think, is when they played. Now, I can't remember which of the they played 2 Polish teams in the group, and I can't remember which one it was, so apologies. But anyway, the kit man of the opposition team turned up at the stadium the night before and did a video of him setting up the dressing room. And basically the video was him walking around going, "Oh, look, we've got one coat hanger. Oh, look, the lights don't work. Oh, look, there's a plastic chair here. Isn't that great? Thanks very much." Opens a cupboard and there's a pile of towels. "Oh, here's the towels they left us." And it looks like your granny's airing cupboard. And he's opened it and there's like 15 towels of different colours that are now more cardboard than they are cotton. That it's just, and you're sort of looking at this, and this is basically the kit man of a Polish club going, "What the absolute is this?" And it's a stadium where the water doesn't run properly in the taps, that's crumbling, that's falling down, where the players and the fans can't quite believe what's being done at institutional level, where there's problems at the training ground, where they've had to train elsewhere because the training ground pitch isn't in good enough condition for them to train on, where the game against Real Oviedo, for example, was cancelled because they relayed the pitch and they decided to do it, I think it was 8 days before the game, and they wondered why it hadn't taken yet. It's just this extraordinary. I mean, it's a bit like it's, to use another cliche, it's the producers. Let's see if we can do something that will absolutely bomb. And it turns out they're in the final. Because they've got some good players.
That's great.
They've got a great attitude. And I think actually there is a risk of overplaying this. But I think that in a way there is this kind of collective togetherness that goes in the face of adversity, which almost helps them. They've got a brilliant manager who I think understands, manages the players really well, has a fantastically kind of empathetic approach to things. Inigo Martinez, who was due to be Andoni Iraola's number 2 at Bournemouth, but didn't get the work permit, so he became the manager at Rayo Vallecano. And they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. This properly shouldn't happen. It absolutely shouldn't happen. It is, let's do the Hollywood thing. It is tiny little league team from a marginal neighbourhood in a shitty city somewhere goes and plays the World Series.
Perfect. Thank you, Sid. Lovely stuff.
Pleasure. Cheerio.
Sid Lowe out in Spain there, and that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll do the Championship playoffs. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Hull won 2-0 at Millwall. Seb, this was a really good game. I mean, both sides had real spells of pressure, but ultimately it is Hull, probably the least expected of the 4 who get to Wembley.
Yeah, a side who got through into the playoff places on the final day, a dramatic final day. I think that the Championship was so tight this season, did a fair few games in it. I mean, I really feel for Millwall, but we'll talk about Hull first. I thought their second half was fantastic because the game felt tetchy and tight in the first half. You weren't sure. I think Millwall felt a bit of pressure playing at home. They'd had a good result away. They were frustrated about the disallowed Leonard goal from the first match, and it was a tense scenario. But I just thought Hull played with a fluency. They exploited Millwall's weaknesses in the second half. When Doughty came on, he didn't seem to be at the pace of the game, and they took full advantage. And it's funny with Hull because they had a situation a couple of seasons back where they reached the playoffs. They sacked Liam Rosenior, then they were in a relegation battle. They dropped off the pace, and now they're in a position where they could return to the Premier League, which is a fantastic achievement. And I actually thought in the game, they played, particularly that second half, when I look at a side who, when you go away from them in the second leg, you do have a freedom. And when you play it at the Den, there's that area behind the goal which is reserved completely for away fans. And they tend to block out the bottom tier of that stand for obvious reasons. And everybody's sort of pushed into the top. But you could hear those whole City fans the whole game, and they really pushed the team on. And Belloumi, who scored the goal, his father was a great Algerian player. I mean, I heard somebody say the other day, I can't remember which Algerian player it was, might have been Reinhard Nouri, and he was saying that Mahrez is the greatest Algerian player of all time. But Lactai, Algeria went to 2 World Cups under him. They were very unfortunate not to go further in 82 for the whole situation with Austria and West Germany. And to pass that on, it was a great moment for him. He's not actually scored that many goals this season, but that was by far his most important. A great finish. And I was pleased for a few whole players in that situation, but I did feel desperately sorry for Millwall, because I think there's been this sense that a lot of people don't want them to come up for the stereotypes, but actually a lot of people do want them to go up because there's that freshness. It's a new team in the Premier League. It's like when Luton came up, people had a sense of, oh, this is great, this is what we want. And I think football fans in general like a freshness. They like to see new winners of things. They like to see how a team will cope. And I know a few Millwall fans, and they had a worry of, if we go up, would we get battered? But at the same time, there's that joy of, well, we'll see Spurs or West Ham go down and we'll change places with them. And it's a win-win situation, because if we stay and Spurs come down, it's still great as well.
Seb, I was second screening this, and having not really watched the Championship this year, I looked up some stats ahead, as I do, and I noticed with some glee that Millwall have been more or less the team you'd expect them to be. Like, they had the second lowest pass complete ratio in the league this season, but won the most aerial duels. So I was like, yeah, all right, I know what I'm getting here. But as much as I was mainly watching Spurs, I did watch a bit of this, and it wasn't that game at all, really. I thought they were kind of... Was that because Hull were really clever in the way they approached it? Because they kind of forced Millwall into a situation where they had to like pass the ball around a lot and try to open the lock, which they didn't seem comfortable doing, really.
I definitely think they caught Millwall by surprise in the second half. Millwall, of course the stats will lean that way, but I mean, Femi Aziz has been a standout at times, although not always consistent. They have had a strong core, and they've been relatively resolute and nicked games here and there and been a tough side to beat. I just think Hull, just the start of that second half, they just went at them, and they never really recovered from that. And the moment they went behind, Hull being a counter-attacking team, that situation just suited them perfectly. And Millwall have been batting above where they should be. You know, they've been punching above their weight for sure. I mean, to miss out in an agonising way really on that last day, having felt that maybe we could squeeze over the line, did hurt them. But I would say they've been more than just that, what the stats show.
I think Hull caught them by surprise because they set up in a different formation to the first leg, 5 at the back. But, I mean, Hull have massively punched above their weight this season. They were among the favourites to be relegated from the Championship. They started the season with a transfer ban for 3 windows, so they haven't been able to pay a transfer fee or a loan fee for anyone this season. They brought in Ollie McBurney, Semi Ajayi, Paddy McNair, Joe Gelhardt, Lundstrom, Lewis Kumas, Ryan Giles, all came in on loans or freebies. And for them to be in the playoff final is quite remarkable.
Yeah, that is extraordinary to have a transfer embargo, isn't it?
Yeah. So the third leg of the transfer embargo has been suspended. So if they do get promoted, they will be able to sign players.
It was a great goal from Belloumi. He does really well as well to nick the ball off the Millwall centre-back and then set up the winner as well for Joe Gelhardt. And their manager, Sergei Jakurovic, who I didn't know a lot about, played for Bosnia as a full international, but also played Croatia vets and Croatia futsal vets. And he said, this is maybe the biggest achievement in my life, my football career. Okay, I won some titles. I had until now a successful career, but in these circumstances to get to the final, I'm very proud of everyone here at the club. And like you say, Seb, they stayed up on goal difference last year. Like that is an amazing turnaround.
The Championship's been like that this season. And I wonder, you know, we spoke about if Spurs or West Ham go down and they do lose a few key players, this idea that they will bounce back up, I think we've seen this season that if you don't get it right, you could be in real problems. I think Ipswich have sort of stumbled their way to promotion, weirdly. Southampton have had this late run, and Leicester City have gone down. So, I mean, it's crazy. And that's what's made the Championship so engaging at times this season.
Yeah, they've been on that great run, Southampton. Obviously, we all know how. No, I don't know yet. They, then they were lucky at Middlesbrough because they had so many chances in that game, but it is goalless. That game happens tonight. Seb, how do you see it?
Gosh, if you'd asked me 3 months ago...
Through a newspaper with squares cut out.
Yeah. If you'd asked me 3 months ago, I'd have said Middlesbrough nailed on. I think the flow's been with Southampton in recent weeks, and I do sort of see them getting through, which again would be a shame for Borough, because they've played some great football at times, and you do wonder if they'll be able to hold on to important players if they start. That's the same case with Millwall, with Kramer, the fullback who can play centre-back, who's been fantastic for them. That's always the worry. But
you wonder if, Seb, you wonder if the EFL are just desperately hoping that Middlesbrough win tonight so they don't have to do anything. Because if Southampton get through, then Middlesbrough will be, rightly aggrieved and will say, well, hang on. And then you've got until the playoff final if you want to make a serious sanction on Southampton if they are found guilty.
But what if they win, Max? What if they then win the playoff final? Then you have Hull City complaining about it. You'll have other sides like Wrexham who missed out. Yeah. This is the thing when you have these things hanging over clubs. You just feel like, can we just pause and get it sorted, and then before we kick on again?
Everyone's making these sort of football content shows these days, and I feel like that genre has gone a little stale. Maybe the court drama following Spygate could be the shot in the arm this needs. It could be like a few good fullbacks, It will be like a very tense courtroom drama.
You can't handle the truth, that kind of thing.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, hopefully it's a shorter series than the Man City one, which obviously is yet to be broadcast.
You need me in that bush.
Susie Rack writing in the paper yesterday that Arsenal England's Beth Mead is going to leave the club after her contract expires this summer. 265 appearances, 86 goals, winning the WSL, 3 League Cups, the Champions League and the Champions Cup. Seb, you'd have seen her a lot in commentary for the Lionesses. So it'd be fascinating to see where she goes.
I mean, I've seen her play for Arsenal. I saw her when she was at Sunderland. She was a great young prospect then. But when she moved to Arsenal, it moved her career up to the next level. Runner-up in a Ballon d'Or. She will leave Arsenal as a legend. The reason why she's leaving, essentially, one of the main reasons why, you can feel that Arsenal are going to go in a different direction this summer. They're going to try and bring in younger players. They're always a club that can attract the very best. Beth Mead's been in a situation where when she came to Arsenal, she almost had to move out to a wide area and learn that position, and she became one of the best around in that position. She's a really clever player. She creates as well as she scores. She's got more, I think, over 50 WSL goals and assists, which is the only player to be in that sort of situation. And her season, I think, is 21-22. She was fantastic for Arsenal, got into double figures for assists and goals, and won the Euros with England. And then had a bad injury. She lost her mother, and it's been difficult for her since she's come back to nail down her England place. And I think she's looking ahead now to the World Cup next year and thinking, I need to play regularly. Manchester City feels like the natural move for her because her partner's there, Viviana Miedema, who was an Arsenal legend as well, I would say. And that seems natural. I know London City Lionesses would be interested as well with their ambitious project. It feels the right time. She's 31 and she'll want to have a crack at that World Cup. She missed the last one through injury. So I think for all parties it sort of works, and she'll be remembered within Arsenal circles for a long time. She provided the assist that led to them winning the Champions League last season.
More on the Guardian Women's Football Weekly out later. Now, there's a great long interview in the paper and on the website with James Wallace, who has interviewed Nigel Martyn, who is getting the chance to represent his country in more than one sport, as he's been selected to play for England's over-60s Lions cricket team. So it's the over-60s national team's second 11. He'll get his red cap on Friday for the game against Scotland. If he makes it into the first team, he'll get the blue cap and be able to call himself a dual international. He says it's a real honour to be selected. I was really impressed at the trial at Loughborough a few weeks ago. These guys are super fit, really strong cricketers, no doddery old men or anything like that. He said, I'd like to play in a World Cup or a Grey Ashes, as it's called. And he said, at my age, you never know, anything could happen. But fair play to Nigel Martyn for, carrying on. I don't know. I mean, I should read the interview. I don't know if he's a batsman or I'm presuming he's a wicketkeeper, right? I mean, that would be the natural, place for Nigel Martyn to be.
I think he's a batsman.
Well, wicketkeeper
batsman. Yeah, okay, that's good. Do you think he just uses an old pair of Sondicos? Says these will do. Whacks him on and gets behind the stumps. But yeah, good luck to Nigel Martyn.
Barry's dropped the Parakeet into the group chat, and my cortisol levels have just disappeared below the threshold. I feel absolutely fantastic right now.
That is lovely. Beautiful shot, Barry. Good to see you.
I did have a crimson rosella parrot in my garden for 3 months. I don't know what it was doing there, but again, joy. It's just joy. Look at animals.
I mean, surely if the YouTube people are up to anything, we can put the picture of the parakeet onto the screen so everyone can join in. And that's a great way of driving people towards our YouTube and maybe we'll Instagram it as well and get some more followers.
Very loud.
Okay.
All right. My next door neighbours feed them so they won't bugger off.
Well, let's start the campaign to cull the parakeets. That'll get us popular, I'm sure. Thank you, everyone.
Don't do that.
That'll do for today.